All right, everyone. I think we are go.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, how's everyone doing today? This is a different streaming time than we normally do, but it's good to sometimes change around the hours and such because different viewers and stuff they don't all live in the same place, and I know the our normal streaming time is kind of at a really bad time for a lot of people in Europe. So.
Yeah.
It's
And
not
the-
even it's not even a very good time for a bunch of people in the United States because like we start at 11 p.m. in the evening, at least on the
Oh,
east
yeah.
coast of the United States. So like it's not even all that great for us.
Yeah. But I guess in general, everybody, we're pleased to have Chris here with us, perhaps better known as Colonel on Instagram. But
Yeah.
nice to have you here.
Thank
Hey,
you.
Meandering Shade is already in the chat room. Hi,
Cool.
Meandering Shade.
Yeah, nice to have you here.
I think it's actually, is there a streaming time that is good for everyone? I think not. The community
no.
is so big that we have no chance to reach everyone. And
Like I think when we're normally streaming, like that's like midday for like people in like Australia or New Zealand, so that's kind of okay for them. But
Yeah.
It's not horrible if you're, since we're on the East Coast, if you're on
in
the West Coast of
California
the
or
United
something.
States, it's not too bad because there's like a 3-hour time difference, so it's not quite as late. But yeah, since the hobby is such kind of has such an international presence, I feel there's not a great single time.
Yeah.
And I think particularly with the sort of the aspect of the hobby that we all seem to enjoy the most, like the conversion and the Ink 28 sort of thing, is also even more selective and is more of a niche hobby element. So I think that makes it more challenging. Because like if we were just talking about, I don't know, competitive 40K or that's something like that, like it's really big, at least here in the United States.
Yeah.
So you could like focus on that audience or something, but that's not really my thing. Like I don't even remember how to play 40K anymore.
Well, yeah, I think I read their newest.
I think we even skipped. We skipped one edition completely, so that I bought the rule book and put it inside. And when we played the next time, I thought, oh, there's a rule book we haven't even looked into for one.
I think I played one game of 8th edition, the current edition.
Okay.
And that was probably 2 or 3 years ago, whenever it was released. So,
well, Chris, do you find time to actually play any of like the different games, Necromunda, Warhammer 40,000, anything like that?
Not really. We play Silver Tower or Gore Chosen or something like that. Or
have you played Blackstone Fortress?
Yeah, we have played that once.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah,
but no, very very limited.
Hey, Larsonic Miniatures is here too.
Hey Lars.
Yeah, hey Lars.
Glad you could join.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we like almost never play any games, or very rarely.
We played.
Well, we used to play every Sunday or every second Sunday, like 1,500 or 2,000 points of 40K or little Necromunda skirmish stuff like that. But yeah, at the moment, life gets in the way.
Yeah, it can be hard.
Most of our dudes have kids and stuff, and yeah.
Yeah, it can be hard to find time for anything like that, at least at a very regular interval.
Yeah.
But so there was at least a time where you did somewhat frequently play the game.
Yeah.
I feel that's the same with the three of us. When we were younger, we played a reasonable amount, though I think at that point it was the 3rd edition of the game.
Yeah, that's when I started, yeah.
And we then largely stopped doing that. but we still kept interested in the hobby, but didn't play it. And hey, Nick Tregeggio's here too. Hey, Nick.
Yeah, good to have you here.
Nick, shouldn't you be writing your thesis? I'm just joking. We know. We've all been there. It's terrible.
Yeah, it's true.
So Nick Tregeggio, Cordal on Instagram. He's a graduate student in the UK.
Okay.
That he's in the process of trying to finish up his graduate work and writing his thesis, and that's all pretty grinding and awful. Even if you're largely excited about your work, it's trying to summarize what you've been doing for probably the past 3 to 5 years in a document, which isn't that fun.
No. Which, admittedly, that when your recent Instagram post with that little graph and people talking about their dissertation, it really kind of struck a chord with me in the context of doing biological research and writing a dissertation on that.
Because with that, it's very much you get deeper and deeper into one very specific topic that probably no longer is interesting to anyone, and maybe not even yourself anymore. Because
that could happen. Yeah. I think the very interesting thing about that graph is, and it only occurred to me, I think yesterday, the fact that the guy who is listening asks if he could know more about it tells that he hasn't understood the graphic. Because he should be aware that the guy wouldn't tell him anything.
That's true. I don't think that quite impressed upon me too. Because you're right. Like if you actually looked at that graph, it was clear that
he's done.
His desire to talk about. Yeah, and I mean that also speaks to me too, because my graduate work, like it took me like 6 years to graduate. And eventually you get pretty jaded, and even if you're still kind of excited about it, and like I would still be, if someone expressed interest, would still be generally happy to talk about it. But overall, like the general impression is like you just want it to be over.
Well,
like you're not that interested anymore.
As you get deeper, you're learning more and more about like less and less. So like by the time you're done, chances are there are only like a handful of people in the world that are even working on the same thing you are. So like you're just sort of like by that like definition, you are an expert in that field just because like there aren't that many people there most of the time.
Yeah,
sure.
But I feel in the context of hobby-related things, I'm always happy to talk about. I'm always happy to talk about hobby stuff.
Yeah, and I feel like it's very much like on Instagram and a lot of the other stuff, or even like on our blog. Like it's particularly true on like the blog earlier on when we used to do like lots of like conversions and stuff. Like we'd write this long blog post essentially talking about where everything came from. And then like one of the first comments you receive is like, where's that head from? And it's like, well, and then we'd always respond and tell them, but it was like, we spent a lot of time writing all that out so people would know.
Yeah.
But I guess more recently I've done a lot more sculpting for a lot of the stuff that I work on. So I feel it since we've gotten less questions and stuff about that, but I feel it still always kind of comes up. And I feel at one time I used to pretty much know really well like nearly all of the different bits and components that Games Workshop released. But now their release schedule is so like rapid that there's just no way, even if you're buying a lot of the stuff, for you to really really have a good understanding and memory of all the stuff. So it's now we're in a better time than we ever were for like conversions and kit bashings and such. But unless you yourself have really looked at all the different stuff, it can be hard.
It's even I feel that I lately don't see certain bits released and they just go unnoticed. Then pop up somewhere and stuff. And the second thing is that the frequency in which they release new kits and the quality of them, it's almost as if you really don't need to kit bash that much to get a certain aspect shown on your miniature.
No,
up to the point where there are miniatures that we would have kit bashed a few years ago, which are actually miniatures, like the Rogue Trader models and stuff. These are all characters you would usually build from other stuff.
Yeah, it's not something that you would have anticipated Games Workshop actually making a model of.
Particularly when there was a time where they were mainly just focused on Space Marines and all of the main armies, and less about exploring more nuanced looks at different aspects of the Imperium. So you didn't really expect that they'd make a Rogue Trader, because they wouldn't necessarily fit into like a Space Marine army. So like, why would they make it?
Which, I mean, I guess is nice that Blackstone Fortress has been a nice ability to make some interesting models and not need to like build an entire army around it. So I mean, heck, Zotes are back because of it. So I mean, I think that's exciting, because otherwise, if it's not Primaris, why are they making it?
Yeah, and well, I think the Blackstone Fortress and Silver Tower are both games where you don't necessarily have to be a Warhammer player.
No, it's certainly true.
They're quite okay for casual gamers, and I play them mostly with people that are not into Warhammer.
That's the same. Like Adam and I played kind of a whole campaign of Blackstone Fortress, and the majority of the people we were playing with were not like, miniature war gamers.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's a nice way to get people potentially interested in the lore and things like that. But true. And it seems Dave's here too. Hey Dave, thanks for being here.
Also, Chris, one of your more recent conversions, or maybe it's not even all that more recent, now you've made with like some Reaver, or some of like the Primaris Reaver models and like some skull helmets. You've made some like spooky agents, and like those, I mean, actually, I don't even know where did the bodies come from them.
The body and the skull head is from the Corpse Grinder guild, from the new Necromunda buff.
Okay, so they're like the big kind of Goliath-esque people with skull heads.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because I think they're really atmospheric and neat, and not even necessarily the most complicated kit bash, but it's to the point that Games Workshop's making so much stuff that...
Yeah, not at all. It's just the upper body sawn off the legs and the head that would go there, and just put it onto Reaver legs and add the Space Marine shoulders, and that's enough to give it a whole new appearance, because you usually don't see these proportions combined.
I feel they're some of my favorite models you've done recently. I think also the painting works really well because it has a nice array of different colors. Like there's the spot of kind of the darker red, and then the checkers with the slight yellow and the slightly glowing eyes. I think it all just works together really, really nicely.
Yeah, they are one of my better paint jobs, I would say. Yeah,
they're very ominous.
They're good.
Thank you. Yeah. Especially what you said. What goes for composition and contrast and stuff. And yeah.
Well, and even just the bass is kind of the rust sort of there also kind of complements just the miniature really nicely. And it gives just a very atmospheric and creepy vibe to it. Hi, we have another Dave in the chat. Hey, Dave, nice to have you here too. Yeah, but I guess since this is streaming both over YouTube and Twitch, I feel some of the people are chatting on Twitch and some are on YouTube. So,
okay. Didn't.
And although, admittedly, I think most of the people who watch it are on YouTube. But because I don't know, I feel that's something more people have a relationship with and have used YouTube for longer than Twitch. 'Cause admittedly, I don't watch too many Twitch streams, to be honest. So it's like
Twitch over the past year or two or few years, it's really become more popular for all manner of different things. But like I feel more originally, it was just people playing video games and the like. So like you could go and watch someone play whatever
Overwatch
new game came out, or watch them play like Counter-Strike or Overwatch or something like that.
But there are a lot of painting streams now, though.
Lately,
there are. I mean, there are like streams about like mechanics and stuff, fixing cars. There are like exercising streams, like you name it. There's someone streaming about it. So I feel it's kind of interesting how over the years it's just become easier and easier to learn more and more about all manner of different things. Like I know when the three of us just started the hobby in general, like the internet was a thing, but like you all had dial up and everything, so you were very rarely on the internet. So pretty much everything, if you wanted to learn new stuff, you were either learning it yourself or directly like talking and meeting with other people at like a hobby shop or something. So I feel now with blogs and Instagram and all that stuff, it's easier than ever to get connected with people and also just learn and see all sorts of different interesting techniques and the like.
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to learn something and if you know what to look for, you will definitely find it in various qualities on the internet. Yeah.
Various qualities. When we started the hobby, like we didn't even know you were supposed to thin your paint.
Yeah, I mean,
I started with oil paints. I think there was a company that's called Revell, and they are specialized in military models and stuff.
Yeah,
they have that tiny metal canisters of oil paint, and yeah.
Yeah, no, because I kind of
think I don't have to say how bad dry brushing works with that word, but
that's not what you want. But yeah, like it's just one of those things. Like you just didn't have any knowledge of it, and very few ways to really get knowledge about it.
Yeah,
like even the White Dwarf magazines, like they really didn't have tremendous articles that would help you teach that sort of stuff. So, yeah, it's a lot different now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so. Well, I mean, I guess with that in mind, I mean, we could probably think about just moving into the interview podcast portion of this.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, yeah.
Unless we want to talk a little bit about some of the stuff we're working on, or we could, move into the podcast and do some of that later. It doesn't really matter.
I feel we could.
So far, you have only mentioned some pieces of terrain you're working on, right?
Yeah. So most of my efforts as of late are working on models and stuff that will hopefully be ready for Adepticon. Like,
yeah.
I'm still working on that little Eldar model. And like the
cool
last times that I showed him, he's now in pieces again. and I'm reworking reworking the anatomy and stuff of them. Like I'm lengthening parts of like the legs and stuff like that, and re-sculpting different aspects of the model. But so it's still a work in progress, and I'm hoping he'll be done relatively soon. But I feel each new model that I'm working on, I find like most of my time is now spent with just sculpting stuff, which I feel is very different from how I used to approach models and stuff. And like I feel in some regards I would sort of like to get back to just doing as much as I can without sculpting, because at least how I typically sculpt stuff, I do everything in like very small parts, so it ends up taking me a long time.
Yeah.
But he's going pretty well.
Yeah, you'll finish
it's
it.
Really cool model, and I think the amount of work you put into your models and the sculpting and the combination of parts makes them really unique and so far away from what you can acquire easily that they are really cool. Yeah.
No, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I feel most of the stuff that when I try and make something, I tried my best to like distance the different components and everything from like the base model, just so like it is sort of like interesting and different. But as I guess we sort of touched on it earlier, now that Games Workshop is releasing so much stuff, like it almost, to me, it seems like if they release something that's particularly cool, like sometimes I will just buy it in the thought that I'm sure I'll be able to find something from this that I could incorporate here or there, and it would like work really well. So it's pretty different. And certainly with like the Bone Reaper models and stuff, like I feel as a whole army itself, I don't really like the look of most of the stuff, but a lot of the components and pieces are certainly, they could sort of slot right into like any like grim dark fantasy type thing and work really well. So in that sense the stuff's pretty great.
Yeah, I think honestly, almost pretty much all of Games Workshop models now, even if it's not something that like particularly speaks to you, it at least, I mean, it's well designed and there's probably something on it that you could use for something else. So
yeah. So yeah, that's what I'm working on. Eric, I think you're still working on assembling some of Games Workshop's like newer terrain stuff, right?
Yeah, I got a box of just the kind of walls and doors and stuff, and I've assembled most of it, and I've continuing to slowly paint some of the plastic floor tiles. So I hopefully next week and such I'll finish the floor tiles and start to paint some of the actual walls and stuff.
Well, do you think you're gonna play anything on those tiles, Eric?
I mean, no.
I mean, maybe.
Nah, I mean, in all honesty, I think probably at least a little bit. Like, I play Kill Team every now and again, and I feel it would be good for that. And honestly, for playing Necromunda, maybe it would be fun to try to use that. And this terrain too, since it's so boxy, it's actually, I feel, easier to store than a lot of Games Workshop terrain, which in itself is nice also. It's not all these trees with branches here and there or spikes and stuff, so it's nice.
Well, I remember when we first started the game, we bought, I think it was the second edition of the game. It came with like 40 of the Gretchen, and they all had their little pointy like World War I-esque helmets, and like I remember poking yourself with the little horns like literally all the time.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, but so I don't know. The terrain isn't maybe necessarily that exciting, but I'll be happy if I can actually paint it. And then be able to use it, and honestly, even just to be able to take pictures with models around it, I think would also be nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Chris, you painted at least a few pieces of this terrain that look really nice. So maybe I'll try to approximate that paint scheme. I don't know. Have to think about it a little bit more.
Yes, actually, it's not that time consuming, and I think if I would have arranged enough room at my table to say paint 5 or 7 or 10 of these pieces, I would have done them in one evening or like that, because once you are, it's not that many brush strokes and it's a wash at the end, so you can get there quite fast if you plan accordingly.
That for painting terrain, I think that's a large part of it. If you think carefully, like, what do you need? What paints do you need? And like, what's your process? Like, you can kind of streamline it down and not take that long to do. But if you don't plan it out and don't have it already, it can take a lot longer.
And you don't necessarily need to spend the amount of time you would have spent on a miniature for the terrain, particularly if it's just some like metal hallways that you could paint some silvers, do some streaking, rust, or grime, and then be done. And it will still look good.
What's your main dry brushing color?
For like the bulkheads and stuff, you mean? Or?
Yeah. On that, is it like one of the light grays?
I think it's Ultron Gray or Celestra Gray.
Yeah, okay, because I think I don't know if I have Celestial Gray, but the other one I feel I've used.
Ultron has more blue in it, and Celestra has more like a yellowish finish. Not much, but just a touch of it.
Yeah, but so I don't know. Maybe I'll try to do some of that. And admittedly, I've been kind of assembling the train. I've been kind of impressed how textured it is. Like, there's a lot of like pitting and different sort of unique details on each of the wall sections and such that just look really nice.
Yeah, I've used I think Army Painter sprays to prime the terrain, because they are usually a bit thicker, and if you know your rattle can well, you can apply a certain amount of texture and little sprinkles to it. And if you do that carefully, you can then, through dry brushing, pick out the texture and give them more texture that you can see without making the model too convoluted.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, because I think the terrain has to be muted so you can look properly at your miniatures.
You don't.
It's just the backdrop, not the focus.
Yeah.
Not the game.
No, that's certainly true.
It's been a long time since I've worked with terrain. Like, probably, I feel like 10 years.
Okay, that's long. Yeah, that's long.
Yeah, like the best that I've done is like on some of the little bases and stuff where I make like little vignettes and stuff, but that's not really that's not really terrain making.
Meandering Shade says here that he has a bunch of the Zone Mortalis terrain that he hasn't touched, and I can relate to that.
Yeah.
Well, I guess maybe with that, maybe we do want to just move into the podcast portion, like, because I feel there's lots of stuff we can ask and talk about, and if we want to, after kind of that sort of interview section, we can, go back to some of that.
Yeah, sure.
So everyone ready?
Yeah.
All
right,
let's start.
I'll do my normal thing. So, all right. 3, 2, 1, record. Hey, everybody, and welcome to Dragged into Turbolasers, a Between the Bolter and Me podcast. This is episode 68, and I'm your host, Eric Wire, and I'm here tonight with my two brothers, Adam Wire.
Hey, everyone.
Greg Wire.
Hey, everyone.
And I'm really excited to say we have a special guest here, Chris Kyle, or perhaps better known as Colonel on like Instagram and that sort of thing. Nice to have you here, Chris.
Hey, people! Thanks for the invite.
Yeah,
really glad to be here.
Yeah, excited to be able to talk with you about your kind of special aspect of the hobby and how you go about your conversions and all that sort of thing. I feel you're a pretty big force in sort of the kit bash and like Ink 28 side of the hobby. So yeah, I'm just excited to be able to talk to you a little bit about some of that stuff. And yeah, it should be good.
Yeah, sure.
I guess so. Sort of with that in mind, maybe we could just start sort of in the beginning. And can you just talk a little bit about maybe yourself and how you got into the hobby?
I think I got into the hobby in '98 when third edition of Warhammer 40K hit the shelves, and there wasn't a Games Workshop around my town for kilometers. Don't even know if there were any Games Workshops in the wider area. So we had the mother of my best friend. We sent her to collect us one of the boxes, and yeah, from then it all started. So it's 22 years now that I'm collecting
so I
little
think
plastic
we started,
miniatures.
there really weren't like a Games Workshop shops anywhere nearby. So it was all like smaller hobby shops and the like. And,
yeah.
So they kind of, each one kind of has its own special like vibe and stuff to it. But since you started there, have you been going pretty strong at it, or has it kind of gone in like waves of interest and stuff? Like certainly for us, sort of how we approached the hobby has changed a lot over the years.
Yeah,
I think that's pretty normal.
Yeah, we used to play Warhammer 40,000. Hard to believe, but it used to happen.
Yeah, we started with a few miniatures, adding to the content of that set box, and there was a time where we used scale 1 to 72 miniatures, with the rules of Warhammer, to see how bigger battles would play out.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I think we played quite frequently and collected stuff for about 5 or maybe 10 years, and then we had a break for about a few years, and I even sold quite all my models. I had I think 4,000 points of Dark Angels, and I put them on eBay back then when selling models over eBay wasn't that popular, so I got just a few bucks out of it. And
do you regret selling those, or you?
I think so, yeah, because these were the first miniatures I painted and converted back then, and I have a few of them I have left. I have a Land Raider and a few of the Metal Scouts with my first green stuff sculpting and stuff like that. But
well, it's nice that you at least kept a few, but in some sense.
Yeah, in recent times, you've made some new like Dark Angel models and stuff with like the different Primaris kits and stuff. Is that sort of to like kind of revisit like an earlier army and stuff? Like I feel we certainly, one of the armies we started when we started playing was a Dark Angels army too.
Yeah. I'm certainly coming back to Dark Angels once in a while. At first, when the Dark Vengeance box was released, I said, hey, let's collect Dark Angels again. And of course, when the Primaris line hit the shelves, I had in mind to bolster up my Dark Angels, or even it goes a little bit in between adding them to my regular Dark Angels army or doing a kind of true scale attempt to make a Primaris scale Dark Angels army for that stands alone, so to say.
Yeah, no, I mean, I have a soft spot for Dark Angels, and I tried to do some simple conversions to make a few kind of Primaris scale Dark Angels because they just look so much better that if I'm gonna spend the time to build some models, some Dark Angels, I want them to at least have some semblance of quality around them. I don't want them to be the old squatty looking models, which I mean, admittedly, I have fond memories of, but I'm not going back.
No, they are super tiny, and
I'm not going back there. But I guess.
Well, I was going to say, I can't believe for a long time the three of us were playing Warhammer. It didn't even occur to us that the anatomy of the original Space Marine models was kind of wonky, that they hardly had abdomens. Somehow we didn't even really realize that. I guess we were so accustomed to them, and they looked right to us, though if you actually examined them based on anatomy, it didn't really make sense. So it took us a long time to realize it. And now maybe that's all that we talk about. But
know what you mean. Absolutely.
Yeah. I guess kind of maybe we can shift that into it. What was your first contact with the Ink 28 Blanchitsu scene, and why and how did you kind of get involved in that? Because it sort of seems like now, if anyone's familiar with your work, I think that's what they think about. They think about all these cool grimdark kit bashes and crazy conversions and such that really fit this Blanchitsu style. And how did you sort of get involved in that? And any comments on that?
Well, one has to say that from the point where you get involved with Warhammer directly, you are also in contact with Blanchitsu and with the grimdark atmosphere. Maybe not in the models, but surely with all the artwork and stuff.
Yeah, not really the models.
And I think the first stuff that I have converted with these grimdarkness in mind were some warrior priests from the old Warhammer Fantasy Flagellants developed a kit with chainswords and stuff like that. But that's a long time ago. And that I really connected with the Ink 28 community and actually convert models with said community in mind and to share with them was when I joined the Inquisitorium Facebook group. I think 3 or 4 years ago. I don't really know when. And I don't visit the group frequently at the moment.
Yeah, I can't say I do either, but it's certainly it's a big kind of force and place for people to kind of share models and stuff in that sort of style that I think particularly now that the ammo bunker was a pretty big forum for it. And I mean, it's still around, but I feel it's not quite as big as it maybe had been. And I think the ease of Facebook groups and stuff is I think made it more popular.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. The first model that I converted in that with that mindset, so to say, was the that Barbarian Skitarii based on the Dark Oath Chieftain.
Okay.
That is actually inspired by John Blanche artwork. And from there on, it took on, and I was 2 or 3 years active in the Inquisitorium page, and then I slowly trickled over to Instagram.
And
I feel Instagram makes it very easy to share your work, and a lot of people don't necessarily want to spend the time to read like a blog post. They just want to see cool pictures. So it works pretty well, Instagram anyway, for the hobby related aspect.
Well, even if they were up for reading a post, like with blogs, like you kind of have to go out of your way to like, hey, is there a new post on this blog, on that blog, and like switch around and actively go out and search for that. Whereas with Instagram, like you can just turn on the app and scroll through stuff. So, I mean, it's just the ease of access is so different.
Absolutely, yeah.
That I think it's good for this sort of thing. And I mean, Instagram, like as sort of a social media platform to talk about like myself or post pictures like places I'm at or whatever, has absolutely no appeal to me. But as like content creators, I think it's great. It's great for kind of that capacity. When you did start to do this Inc. 28 stuff, like how quickly did you start to kind of build war bands and things like that? And when you did, was it with playing like Necromunda or something in mind, or was it firmly in this realm of like, I just want to make cool models and explore some elements of the lore and whatnot that maybe isn't always seen on models?
It's a bit of both, I would say. Of course, I had in mind playing with these miniatures at the time that I built them, but I have to admit that I rarely have played with any of these miniatures so far.
Or in that vein, is there any group of models that you haven't really played with, but you would really like to play, like Necromunda or one of the games with? Is there something that you feel that you've made that would work really well for that you just haven't had a chance to do and would like to?
I think the coolest aspect of the Inc. 28 hobby or the game in itself, and I think that was what I had in mind when I started doing it, is that the 54mm game Inquisitor was a really, really great game and had cool rules. And the original intention was just to build small miniatures that you could put into a small case and take everywhere and just play that game without having those kilos of metal to carry around. So I think I have loads of miniatures that I just could pick and call a few people that aren't really involved in this and just put warbands into their hands and have cool games of Inquisitor. But it hasn't happened yet.
Inquisitor, I think, was honestly kind of a turning point for me, even though, I mean, I didn't necessarily play it a whole lot, but just all the atmosphere and the artwork in the rule book and this focus on some of those narrative elements that weren't normally what you'd seen in these large scale 40K games was really appealing to me. Like, as I said, like all the art was really cool and looked at interesting things, and it actually developed the Inquisition into something interesting with like kind of different ideologies and such, which was like really, really cool. And to me, it maybe was something that realized like there's more room to grow here and interesting things to explore and consider, rather than just like Space Marines are cool and they kill orcs.
Also, in that vein with Inquisitor and whatnot, maybe it was now a year or a year and a half ago, you went on a project to recreate a lot of the artwork from Inquisitor in model form. Like, what prompted you to do that? And I think it went over just like a month or something, and you made a ton of models in a very short period of time, all of which doing an excellent job of capturing the images you were going for. Like, what prompted that?
Well, the Inquisitor rulebook falls into my hands quite frequently because of the cool artwork and stuff, and the fond memories that are connected with it. And it was just like when I began with it, I wanted to build little versions of miniatures to play that game, so it was kind of obvious that I had to build the characters and the models that were available in 54 millimeter, just in 28. And as I think I'm mostly inspired by artwork and stuff, so I thought it a cool idea to just pick artwork and try to recreate as much as possible.
Artwork. Yes, I mean that's a good idea. Like I feel a lot of the artwork. I know, like some of it I like really love, and I feel I've always sort of thought about it would be neat to try and recreate some of those in model form, but I never really got around to actually doing it. So it's neat to actually see that you went there and did you made a ton of different models, and I feel a lot of them do a great job of capturing sort of the essence of that artwork, and they're like, if you have any remembrance of the artwork, it's immediately recognizable, which I think is impressive.
That was my aim exactly, and I actually have done all the main characters from the book.
Mm-hmm. That's
and
cool.
a few others of which I really love the artwork, or that have iconic artwork but never had a miniature.
Well, so kind of in a similar vein there, you talk about how some of that artwork are some of your biggest inspirations. Do you have other inspirations that maybe aren't directly Warhammer related, so like perhaps books or film or music or things like that you take inspiration from that you try to put into your work?
Yeah, I would say books, of course, but as I'm reading only Warhammer books for I think about 98% of my reading time, that kind of doesn't count in. But I think everything that I consume that you could call media, be it movies or comic books or music or artwork or stuff, has something in it that inspires me to do something. Sometimes it can be a song or a tune. Sometimes it's artwork where I say, okay, I want to build that, or I want to pick that scene or that mood, or something like that. And movies, of course, all sci-fi movies and stuff.
Is there a particular sci-fi movie that you particularly like?
Aliens Returns is my all-time favorite.
Oh, that's cool.
And
is that the second Alien film?
Yeah, exactly.
So with the colonial marines,
exactly,
and the alien queen and all that. That is
iconic. Iconic is like an understatement.
Absolutely, and maybe I think the old cheesier action films like RoboCop or Judge Dredd or such, they translate a certain mood or even color scheme or atmosphere that is very grimdark and can inspire, whereas the newer renditions of that often provide you with better effects or a more detailed view of the technology and stuff like that. So that's pretty much all very inspiring, I think.
Yeah. Well, when you're working in general, do you do that in isolation, or are you listening to music, having stuff playing? I know for me, most of the time, if I'm working, I'm either listening to music or maybe I'll have a YouTube video or something playing just for background noise.
Usually, I listen to music. I had times where I watched Netflix stuff, but mostly dumb series like Archer or Family Guy or stuff that you just can absorb somehow and have
You don't have
people
to have
talking.
close. You
don't have to pay that much attention. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but most often I listen to music, and it varies from week to week, if that's like stoner metal or dark country or sometimes 80s synthwave.
Okay.
Not really fixed on a certain tune.
Yeah, I've watched some of your YouTube streams and always appreciated your musical choices in them. Like the doom metal band, The Sword, that you were playing that I quite like, and I think they're from Sweden. Desert rock stoner metal band called Truck Fighters.
Yeah.
They're actually touring in the United States this month.
Ah, cool.
Whatever that's worth.
I have a few playlists or bands on my computer that I frequently return to, but sometimes I just hit YouTube and listen to some mixes, and after half an hour, you don't really know what you're listening at now.
See where the
automatically keeps switching stuff. So yeah, that can happen. And the cool thing is that you now can actually have music in your YouTube videos. I think that wasn't so in the past. I don't think Instagram has it still, that you get kicked when you play music you don't own the rights for. The only thing is that you can't monetize the video on YouTube. I think that's a recent development, and I think it's cool because I personally want to listen to music when I do my streams. I sometimes think about if it's a good idea, because if people want to watch my streams, maybe they want to listen to their own music, but then they could mute my stream or whatever. But I don't even know why people would watch me 1 hour painting stuff, because I'm totally not into watching streams of that kind.
Well, it's like, it's just everyone's a little different. Like I know, I've sometimes I'll sit and like watch long streams of like people paint and stuff, and not really saying much. And it's like I'm not watching every instance of it in detail. But like it's also just a good record. Like if you really want to see some aspect, like you could go back to it. So like I feel there's value in like about any of the stuff like that.
That's certainly true. I guess we kind of mentioned that, or YouTube a little bit, and you actually have a YouTube channel that you've done some streaming and stuff.
Yeah.
Would you like to talk a little bit about that, how you kind of got into the streaming thing, creating videos of your conversions, and like what you'd like to do with it in the future, or like what's your general experience there?
I started streaming stuff on Instagram naturally, because it's super easy. You just have to put your phone or tablet or whatever in front of you and hit the button, and everyone can see it. But I was always not really fond of the quality, at least what I could see on my device. People told me that the quality was good or okay, but at my end, it was always grainy, and as said before, I could never think of being captured by what I saw on my screen. So I started recording stuff for YouTube, first with I think my smartphone, then with a DSLR camera, and it was lots of work converting the videos into a format that would fit the screen, and then it would be squeezed and stuff, and you had the stuff in front of you, and it wasn't really that good. But recently I have a tablet that makes quite good videos, and I can just place it in front of me and either start streaming on Instagram or recording stuff for YouTube.
So that's nice. And I think that's a big thing, trying to figure out like a way that you can record stuff that you're satisfied with, but that doesn't sort of hinder what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
Like particularly if like you're doing conversions, working on like green stuff work or painting or whatever. Obviously the models are small and you need a fair amount of dexterity to do that sort of stuff. So like you can't have a camera like right in front of you or all that stuff. So I think lots of learning and setting up something that works for you.
Well, I feel with making YouTube videos, it's probably a thing where it takes a lot of time to do all that. And maybe at least once you start, you don't see much of a return on that investment, and that maybe it seems like not very many people are watching it, and you kind of wonder whether you want to keep doing it. Is that something that you've struggled with, or?
I have to say, and it might sound rude, but I don't really care if people watch my stuff.
I feel that's probably the best attitude to have about
it's probably a healthy attitude for it, to be honest.
Because I can't really do something about it. I could only buy better equipment and arrange stuff better. And as you mentioned, I don't think that there would be an equivalent return of good comments or good feeling for me. So I just do what I do. I try to record the stuff I do as often as possible, which isn't quite often.
Well, I guess
I understand that. Like I know on our streams and blog, like I've done a little trying to stream me working on like hobby related stuff, and like I've never been super happy with how it came out. And I think part of that's just due to like how I have the cameras and stuff set up. Like the focusing is like really bad, and then
it's even if you don't work on the video files afterwards, if you want to do a tutorial about, say, painting bases or whatever, you have to arrange everything. You have to fix your camera. You have to think about if everything is into focus and stuff like that. And when you've actually done with it, with filming, it has taken 10 times as long as it would have taken you to just paint the base. So for me, it's more productive to just put the tablet in front of me and stream on Instagram, no matter the quality. So people can see what I'm doing and can pick up ideas and maybe even teachings on the fly, so to say. And if I feel that I could transport it better with a video that is focused on that theme, I will try to do it.
Yeah, and I guess it's just one of those things that, as you suggested, it's going to take up time that could have been spent doing other hobby-related things, and you just sort of have to prioritize that. And because certainly if you want to do YouTube like a lot and do all that video editing and all those things, like that's a large investment of time that, you can't put towards converting models or painting them and such. So like I think it is a lot about just sort of prioritizing what you want to do. And I think continue.
The thing is that at the moment I use 2 tablets, one for streaming on Instagram because it works in the upright position and gives a good picture and stuff. But I can't use it to record stuff for YouTube because it will get too grainy. And I have that other tablet which makes good videos for YouTube, but I can't stream with it on Instagram because the camera doesn't turn around when I put it upside down. So
all sorts of little things, frustrations.
Yeah, and that mainly keeps me from doing more stuff on YouTube. But so far I haven't tried to stream with that tablet on YouTube directly because there just isn't the crowd to watch the stream. And what I find appealing on Instagram is that you have instantly people with which you can talk about what you do. or just chat, because you see the chat and people get involved and ask questions, and it's a much more relaxed art of relaxed thing.
I would also say if you've fairly well established yourself on Instagram such that there are lots of people that are following your work there, such that if you start a live stream, there are probably lots of people that will then tune in. Whereas if for any like YouTube account to really be popular, I feel it's something you have to be doing for a while to slowly build up a following, and you kind of have to decide whether that's worth it or not, and whether you would rather just spend more of your time working on those models and every once in a while doing like an Instagram stream.
Yeah, and another thing we have already mentioned before is that if you look at the stuff on Instagram and then want to watch a video on YouTube, it's just one click, but it's that one click that people often won't do to get there. They want to have it presented to them right there, and
Yeah, because that is true. If you look at all like the analytics and stuff, if even just on ours, when it's something like, oh, this is a nice picture, and it's like, oh, and there's more on the blog, and you can look at the analytics, and it's like, oh, I get like, I'm gonna say like 800 likes. Like that's not too bad. And then you look like how many of those actually translated into clicking on a website, and it's like 5. It's like, oh yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's very true. And I guess another thing, like if you really did want to, as I mentioned that it seems kind of like a healthy thing that you don't care hugely how many like YouTube views you have. I think one reason why that is healthy is because to really make YouTube work, like you kind of have to sort of play the YouTube game of like, how can I make content or change the title of my videos to come up more frequently, such that like when someone's watching something, it'll be recommended next. Like you have to really like kind of analyze that stuff, and maybe also make videos you're not interested in just so you can get those clicks and start to be recommended to be watched again and again. And like that, at least for me, doesn't appeal to me.
Yeah. I don't do the YouTube stuff to become popular or something like that, or to get more views on whatever. It's just basically building up a library of stuff that I am fond of and that I would like to have to cross-reference when I come back to a project, for example. It's like even it's a library for me that if I forget how I painted the bases for my Dark Angels army, I could just revisit my YouTube channel, and it's there for people to watch, of course, and I am fond of everyone who is watching it and stuff. It's that I care, yes, but it doesn't impact on me if people like the video or not, because it's there and they can like it or they can like it not, and they can watch it or they can let it be.
Well, I was going to say, I think the best art comes out of when somebody is making it because they want to do it, and it's being made for themselves. I mean, and sure, people can like it and find inspiration in it, but it's always better if you're doing the work for yourself.
Yeah.
And it's the same with music, too. Like, I would rather be listening or finding music that the artists made for them rather than something that they're trying to
pander toward,
that they think might be popular.
Yeah. And like also the idea of being able to kind of go back for yourself and reference stuff, that's certainly been something that like I like it, like about our blog and even Instagram. Like it is a nice way to sort of chronicle your progress, what you've learned, and like go back and reference. Like that is a nice thing, and why that, like honestly, particularly for how easy Instagram is. Like if you don't have an Instagram account to kind of share your work, I feel it's really worth creating one, because you can engage with the community more and talk with people, ask questions, or just see neat models. Like I think it's good for the hobby in general.
Yeah. Well, of course, it's very pleasing and a great feeling when people like your stuff, and absolutely, that's getting better the more people like it, of course. But yeah, I really don't do it for that. Even the whole Instagram thing for me started with the intention to have a gallery of my stuff to show friends or family, or just to have collected all my stuff in one place where I can kind of have a record of what I have done so far.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I guess maybe we could transition into, like, I think people probably know you the most for all your kind of crazy, awesome kit bashes. Like, could you talk a little bit about, how you go about your conversions? And it seems like you are very precise and particular about the conversions you do, such that you can kind of minimize the need for green stuff and sculpting, which is, I think, pretty impressive, because kits and stuff aren't always scaled like the same and all these things. So, like, I feel it takes a very particular eye to find good kit bashes, particularly ones that don't just look like, I changed this head.
Well, it differs from project to project how I approach my builds. Sometimes it's that I see a model and pick a few details that I feel are looking wrong, or that I could make different, and I just switch them to the pieces I want on the model. Or sometimes I have a particular picture in mind and then just roam through my memory or the Games Workshop website or my bits boxes and pull out everything that I feel could be the fitting piece or has parts on it that I could use for that. And yeah, from there on, it usually just builds itself, so to say. I start very rough. Like, okay, I want a guy in big armor that is wielding a close combat weapon and a pistol. So I pick the first part that come close to that, and I try to arrange the thing so that I like it, and I check which pose looks best and stuff, and then I begin to switch parts again. Like, okay, do I want a power blade or a chainsword? Or do I want it to be a staff or single-handed or a two-handed weapon? And during that process, often the pose and the proportions might change. And I always work with the fact in mind that I absolutely hate sculpting with green stuff. I can do it, but I don't really enjoy it. Except from the few moments where my sculpting tools do exactly what I want them to do. So I build up my models so that I can cover all those places that I would have to use green stuff with other parts. Mainly like if the chest doesn't fit the legs, I will add pouches to make the transition to the upper body, or I position the arms with a little wire or glue them intentionally way down the torso so that the elbows are on the hip, so that it looks good, and then just cover up the missing link with huge shoulder plates and stuff like that. Or sometimes I even add bigger focus points to the model so that you won't even look at those parts where something could be wrong. So that the focus is leading you around that place.
Yeah, I mean, I feel that's like a smart way to do things, and it like allows you to keep making more models and such, rather than spending an inordinate amount of time on any one thing. You can keep exploring other ideas and such, which I think is neat, and that's certainly evident.
There are so many gaps on my models that you won't see later. Of course, if you pick them up and turn them around and look look from the downside, I think there are sure models where you could look through the model under the armpit and out the other side. But yeah, you could fill that gap, but you could do without it.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like with Adam, you have kind of gone to the point where now you like sculpt almost everything. So like you've been working on that Eldar model for, I don't know, like a month or 2 months or something. So there's certainly a downside to
Yeah, like I feel
sculpting.
many times I feel I'd sort of like to go a little closer to like sort of what you were talking about, because like I feel like that could help me like finish more stuff rather than get like mired down and like on details and stuff. Like I know, which this was probably pretty stupid, but like when I got the new Deloc kit, like a lot of those models, like they have their boots sculpted, but their legs are just completely gone. But you can like look up underneath it and there's just a hollow space there. And so like the first model from them that I assembled, like I literally re-sculpted the legs and then glued it together, and now like literally no one will ever see them. But it's probably pretty. I should have just filled the hole, and that would have like largely would have been all I needed to do. But I guess I think at the time I was thinking it would be good practice, so maybe that's fine.
Yeah. The one thing why I do it that way is that I'm very impatient and that I want to have the model done as fast as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And the other fact is that during over the years where I have developed my painting skills, there comes a point where you learn about focus on a model.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have that in mind, it just makes kind of click, and you just see the unnecessary areas on a model that you don't have to sculpt or paint in the same way that you would, let's say, the head or something like that.
Yeah, and I think it allows you just to make more models, paint more models, experiment with different kind of conversion ideas, opportunities, and probably just learn more quickly.
Well, I feel like looking at all of your different conversions and stuff, like you've like worked with so many different like model kits and stuff that I feel like you just, having worked on so many different models, you just have a very good sense of like how things work together or how you could potentially use something in the future, and you have a pretty good sense of like scale and size of everything. So I feel the more you do anything like that, it probably just kind of helps fuel that and make it easier in the future to like make new things.
Yeah. As said, I draw a huge amount of my inspiration from artwork.
Mm-hmm.
And in artwork or in pictures or in movies, you have the right scale, of course.
Yes, yeah.
And I have a very good memory, and I can transfer what I have seen, so I see if the model has the right proportions or not. And it might have to do with the fact that I am working as a blacksmith for about 15 years now.
Oh, that's
and
cool.
what we do is a lot of art stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And even on the big pieces that are about 5 meters in height or stuff like that, we always stand in front of it and mostly come to the point where we say, okay, this looks odd. We have to cut away a bit because it's too high, or we have to add a bit to make the proportions right. And I guess you are now thinking that we would cut about 30 millimeters or half a meter off of it, but usually it is like, okay, cut 2 millimeters.
Okay. So yeah.
From the 5 meters stuff, and that small proportion that makes a lot of difference in my job. So it just translates into the small things. And as I can cut and file and drill stuff, and I do it all day, of course, I use that as my main technique to build my conversions instead of sculpting.
Well, no, I feel like for a lot of things, just very minor modifications can really have a large effect on the overall look or feel of a model. Like oftentimes, if you just like seat a head slightly higher or anything like that, it can really do a lot to change the overall feel and effect of a model. So like that notion, I feel. In many regards, I feel the quicker you can get a model to like a general semblance of order, the quicker you can kind of figure out what you need to do to improve it or what needs to be changed. Because I know with a lot of like some of the stuff that I've worked on where I have done a lot of sculpting, like I'll do a whole bunch of work and then like, okay, let's add the arms. And then you add the arms, it's like, well, that doesn't look right at all. Now I have to go back and like rework the legs or all this other stuff. And so I feel the quicker you can kind of assemble the rough framework of like any model, the easier it is to like kind of judge whether you're going in the right direction or if like, if this just doesn't work at all. So I think that's a good thing to consider.
Yeah, I always pick all the parts of the model I want to use and pre-assemble with blue tack or with wire to have the whole picture really early in the process. So I know right away where I have to add stuff. And sometimes I pre-build 3 or 4 versions of a model and then pick the best or pick the legs from that and so on until I have the really rough model lying finished, and then I start to add details. And I think I would go the same way if I would sculpt most of the thing, just
That's a
big framework, and then pick all the parts I don't have to sculpt, which are just fitting, and then I think I would even say if I want to do a bigger version of a Tempestal Skyen or something like that, I would take all the parts and cut away all the parts that I don't want to sculpt, like cutting off the elbows and the hands and the arms and the armor, and then rearrange it and then just sculpt the tissue, the clothes in between and stuff like that.
Well, so one thing
instead of doing the whole thing from the start.
Yeah. One of the things, so like I think that sort of speaks to that whole notion, like on your Instagram post, you have where you're building that iconic Inquisitor from the cover of Inquisitor. Is his name Tyrus or whatever his name is? You have a bunch of pictures on Instagram showing kind of different stages of the model. Like I think one of your first pictures, like you just sort of like tack together a bunch of different pieces, the different legs and stuff, and like
exactly,
that gives you kind of a sense like you're kind of working to kind of get the posing and the feel of the model correct. But like at the very early stages, it looks kind of weird. But like as you start adding other details, kind of reworking and tweaking how the legs are and the arms, and then like it really starts to come together. And like I think that's kind of a clever and a good way to work about stuff. I feel maybe in the future, maybe I'll try and do more of this because I think that is a good way of going about it and can sort of like prevent you from spending all this time working on something only to kind of put it together and realize that like, well, this isn't right and I'm not happy with it.
Yeah.
Well, so Chris, are you the sort that have a ton of different projects going at once?
Absolutely.
Okay, so it's not that you start one thing, you finish it, and then go to another thing. You have a bunch of ideas that you're working with, a bunch of different things, and
Yeah, well, I tried that, and there are a few projects that I started and finished them before starting something new. But I think I can count them on one or maybe two hands.
yeah.
And usually I have a ton of different projects, and whenever I come to an impasse or don't know where to go further, aren't in the mood to paint that color, I just pick another model and paint it that, or go back to kit bashing, or even salt my hobby days with a bit of building models right out of the box.
Yeah, no, that's good. I feel having a lot of projects kind of helps with that, because I feel most people that are in the hobby, they sort of know like your inspiration and mood kind of works in mysterious ways. So if you do have a whole bunch of different things you're working on, like it can sort of help drive you to continue to do stuff and pushing forward on at least something. Like if it's like, oh, well, I have these models, I just kind of want a stock build, like you could do that. Or it's like, I don't really feel like doing a whole lot today, but like I could like, oh, reposition this arm, or like I could add a few details here or there. I think that kind of helps, because I feel the more you can get into a habit or a routine of actually doing stuff like pretty frequently, I think that just in general helps.
Yeah, it can be quite distracting if you have too many projects, and it is very fulfilling if you put an end to something and just wrap it up and put it into the cabinet, or have a game with it or something like that. And when I feel that I can come to that point that there's a certain grayness on my desk, I would like to say, where I don't see where to put my effort next, or that when I see that I don't go anywhere with anything, I pick the two or three projects that I want to do the most, and I get every other thing packed away so that I don't see it anymore, and have only these two projects.
Okay, so you can really focus
on my desk here, and then I wait until they appeal to me, and do something different, like playing computer games or reading a book or something. And when the day comes where I want to work on these projects, I do. And most of the time, I keep picking up other projects right away to fill the desk again.
So we've been talking a bunch about conversions and how you try as much as possible to minimize the need to do sculpting. Are there any particular tools that you use that you find are really essential that help, with that sort of thing, like any particular clippers or this sort of thing that you might recommend, or that really is invaluable to you?
Well, the clippers are, of course, the main workhorse for kit bashing, and over time I have, I think, found the cheapest clippers that you can get over eBay, which cost about €2 or stuff. And they have never failed me. I have two of them, and so far only the grip has loosened, and they cut quite flush. And the second tool would be my resin or razor saw, with which I can make really precise cuts up to. Well, lately on my Black Shield miniature, I sawed off an index finger from a Space Marine hand and put it onto another hand, so he has his finger on the mag release of his gun. So it's a very, very delicate tool opposed to the clippers.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then
also, like, you're trying to use a hobby knife to do that. Often it doesn't really cut straight, or it might not, and that's true. And I admittedly haven't really. I don't even. Well, actually, I have one hobby saw, but it's kind of garbage. So I feel might be good to look into getting a better thing like that, such that you can be more controlled and precise about what you're doing. Because I think that, like doing like what you said for like cutting off the one finger, such that you need to be pretty precise with that.
Yeah, and whenever you work on something, and I think that's a universal law, you have to see that you have progress, and you have to see that you're actually doing something. And of course, it's more satisfying cutting away a shoulder pad with 2 straight cuts instead of nipping at it for 10 minutes and then scraping at it with your cutter and stuff. So it's always preferable, of course, to use the right tool for the equivalent step that you want to do. And of course, I use a hobby knife because there are places on the model where the clippers don't go, or you can't make an angular cut with a saw. And
what
stuff
sort
like
of saw is it that you use?
I use a so-called razor saw. So the blade is as thin as a razor blade, like on a shaver, just with tiny teeth, or it's called a resin or jeweler's saw.
Yeah.
And I think the thickness of the blade is under 1/10 of a millimeter, something like that. It's really, really thin.
Yeah.
Up to breaking point, and you can make really precise cuts with it.
I need to look into some of it, because I know like Tamiya, which makes a lot of good hobby tools and stuff, they have a lot of different like really fine like jeweler saw blades of different diameters and such. And I think, as you suggested, having the right tool for the job really helps a lot. Towards that end, like what sort of glue do you tend to use?
I tend to use regular plastic glue from Revell, or I've used Uhu or something like that. Mainly stuff that melts the plastic a bit, so I can squeeze or pull parts slightly apart and can adjust tiny amount that I can't get right with cutting.
So not just super glue.
No, I rarely use super glue.
I feel for a long time with all of our hobby building projects, we exclusively used super glue for years, and then learned that plastic glue was great.
Yeah, like various types of Tamiya stuff. Like I feel in at least one of your videos, I thought I saw you have like maybe a bottle of Tamiya glue, like the little glass bottle with the brush.
No, I don't have one of these.
Okay, so maybe it was.
They're nice.
I have seen these, and I have heard that it's really good, and people use that stuff sometimes as a kind of filler for gaps. But so far, I haven't acquired a bottle of these. No.
Well, so I was looking at their little, like the black shield, like the bolter, and like how you cut off the little finger, and I have the picture here on Instagram. So it also looks like you most likely used a saw to like cut off like the bottom of one of the bolters with like the little foregrips and whatnot, and then just placed another bolter on top of that. Like you use one of the little razor saws for that, presumably.
Yeah, exactly. The bolt gun itself is from the Death Watch, and I think I have even cut it from the hand that it's holding it originally.
It looks
and then I cut away the finger that goes through the trigger guard and have transplanted that index finger from pointy Primaris hand. And the scopes and stuff are from the newer Primaris. I don't know the name, those infiltrators or something like that. So that gun is quite convoluted, yeah.
So that's nice because like I feel, so I have some saws and stuff, and I don't tend to use them too much, but like I know one of the things that like whenever I'm like trying to make little detailed weapons and stuff, like most of the time I'm working with just a hobby knife, and getting everything to be pretty straight can be sort of hard on a small scale. So I feel by using a saw or something that sort of helps maintain like a straighter like cut, and you don't have to necessarily worry as much about, oh, now I have to shave like a few more, like a.
Actually, the blade of my hobby saw is roughly as thick as the edge of my cutter.
Yeah. Okay.
So you can, or you have to have in mind that when you do something, when you cut something with your hobby knife, you always squeezing it. So you cut into it like with an axe.
Yeah.
If you zoom in, so to say. So you have always warping of the parts.
Yeah.
You want to use later. And when I work on weapons, I often try to use for example, the Piccadilly rails on top or scopes or stuff like that. And with the razor saw, you can just cut it directly from the weapon without losing much material of both. So I can always use the weapon for another build, so to say, and use the rail or the barrel for another.
Yeah. I need to look into getting some stuff like this, because that would be substantially easier.
Yeah,
I think to work.
Just cutting off the tiny little pieces with like a blade, like depending on how you apply the pressure, you can pretty easily just destroy whatever it is you wanted.
Particularly with everything, it's so small that like it's so easy to not misapply the pressure or whatever, or cut it crooked, and then. So yes, I mean that's good to hear.
As I am preparing for holding actually Kit Bash seminars at Adepticon, I have thought a lot of how to of what to tell people about kit bashing and all the techniques and what tools I use and stuff. And only then it came to my mind that I have a huge opportunity and a better ability of doing the stuff, because I work with those tools every day.
Yeah, because I feel a lot of people
just in the bigger scale. Yeah, but most of the people don't. They just don't have the connection to the tools, and hence it's more complicated for them to achieve the stuff I do naturally, so to say.
Yeah.
Someone actually mentioned in the chat here, like when you are trying to, like, let's say, cut off like one of the little Picatinny rails or something, how do you actually hold the part that you're cutting? And like, do you use just your fingers? Do you use like a tweezers, or like how do you
position or something
stuff in a way that will facilitate the action?
Yeah. When the part that I want to cut is really small, I usually put it between tweezers and cut in between the tweezers, so to say, that it can't flop away. And the main tool I use for cutting stuff, or the main addition, is a strip of leather.
Okay.
A bit softer than you would use for a belt, actually. Because I can press the bit down into it and it won't budge away.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
I also have used polystyrene in some cases, where it just it compresses a little and takes the form of the part, and it doesn't slip away.
See, that's the sort of thing that I feel people who don't do anything with like those tools wouldn't really know that. So that's the sort of thing that, like, it's good to hear somebody talk about.
There's always little things you can learn.
So with that, Van, so you're going to Adepticon this year in the United States, and you're doing some bashing seminars. What are you bringing, like all the parts that you're going to use for that, or what are you having the people attending it bring?
I'm sort of developing that at the moment. I have two versions of seminars at Adepticon. The one is where I mainly talk about conversions and how to do it and show a few of my things and how I composed the stuff. There's lots about composition and where I will show how I convert a piece. So it's more like people look and listen what I'm doing. And there are two other classes with less people where I actually show people how to convert and show them the basics, and where people have hands-on experience with stuff. I'm working at the moment to acquire the tools, at least for most of the participants, but if they have the tools, they would be cool if they could bring it. Because I can't pack all my luggage full of stuff. And what I, at the moment, have to figure out is how much bits from myself I could bring with, and how much stuff I have to acquire over there. And the plan is to ask bits sellers and stores who are actually attending Adepticon if I can get stuff from them.
Okay.
Well, at least I can buy stuff from them, or I will contact several bits sites or stuff like that and have them ship stuff I bought to friends in the US so they could bring the stuff for me to Adepticon.
We can certainly help you with providing you stuff. Like if you need help buying some stuff, we can help with that too, since we are here. Admittedly, we're not that close to where Adepticon actually takes place, but it's certainly easy for us to get there than like cross the ocean flight.
Yeah, I have a few friends who drive there by car, so they would be.
That's like ideal.
Probably ideal for that.
Yeah.
And for example, the main issue would be to have plastic glue for 12 people in your luggage, which isn't actually that good in international flights.
No.
So, yeah, but it's slowly coming together.
That's good.
And well, at the beginning, I have to admit that I only saw, or I tried to put the least effort into it to get the most of the money out of it, to get my flight paid and stuff. But that's the totally wrong go on that thing, of course, because people don't pay for these classes to have me fly over to Adepticon. They pay for the classes to see what I'm doing and to learn something about it. So we'll try to make these seminars really cool, with lots of stuff to learn and to do and to take. To take.
Are there still spots open in the classes? So
I think so. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so for people listening to this, if you have a chance to go to Adepticon, you could still potentially sign up for one or two of them.
Yeah. There are 3 seminars in all, and I think all 3 have at the moment only half the seats.
Okay, that's cool.
And it's like if people want to search them, I think they have to use. It's based on like your actual name, correct?
Yes.
It's not Colonel.
It's not Colonel. Right? I don't know why I haven't thought about it.
Okay.
Would be probably more obvious if you could find them by searching for Colonel, but that's why I have repeatedly put it on my Instagram.
Yeah.
How
good.
People can find it, and of course I will do a few posts referring to that in the
that's good.
near future. so that people can find it and that people know a bit more what to expect and what not to expect, because the skill level will be varying from beginners to people who can do it already or stuff. And I just can't appease everyone. So there will be passages for people who already know that, and there will be passages in the classes that are probably too high for beginners to grasp. Or maybe not. I don't know. I will have to find a way in between.
Yeah, everyone comes at stuff from a different aspect. And I know, like, for instance, I'm certainly very experienced with a lot of stuff, but even, like, just different perspectives and, like, different ways to, like, use tools, how to approach stuff, like, all of that has value, and it's hard to really judge and figure out what people will get from anything. But I think just in general, you talking and showing people your stuff, like, will have value to, I feel, just about anyone. At least I think.
You went to Adepticon last year. Did you have the opportunity to take any courses while there?
Yes.
That sort of influence how you're thinking about structuring this? I mean, admittedly, there's so much diversity in the classes, whether they're writing or all these things that, maybe it's but
sadly, you can't take every course that is given there, and the amount of knowledge you could acquire if you could attend all these courses is just phenomenal. And I think even if you could, even if you would have the time to attend all the classes, your brain possibly couldn't
handle
save
all
the data, couldn't handle it.
Yeah.
And with that in mind, I think I had 2 classes. One was about freehand painting with Mr. Farabi. And the second was painting basics with Andy Wardle and Richard Gray.
Oh, okay. Well, that's cool.
It was half a day work where we painted Space Marine to high standard with reflective armor and stuff like that. So that was really cool, and I learned a lot. Not only regarding the techniques, but how to structure and set up something like that. Yeah.
Well, that's great that just with your second Adepticon you're coming to, you're already trying to kind of give back to the community and show people there how to do kit bashing and stuff. So that's really cool that you're already trying to do something like that. So quick.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the thing is there aren't many courses about kit bashing at all. I think it's even if it's probably quite common because everyone has taken stuff from other kits and put it on something else to individualize his army. It's not so far developed that people give courses or that you have a variety like in painting.
I think that's
it's not so easy to show people how it's done because you need much more equipment. For painting, you just have to bring a brush and a few pots of paint, and you can fire away. There's no potential of people getting injured.
That is certainly true.
So, people would start asking questions like, "Why do you have 15 little like clippers in your?"
That will be really funny.
Yeah. Well, I guess also when you went to Adepticon last year, you took part in the Carrion Pass event, that sort of Blanchett Inc. 28 event at Ward, Sylvania. Ryan, can you talk a little bit about that? And was that your first of these kind of Inc. 28 events that you've played in, or?
Yeah, that actually was the very first time that I not also played an Inquisitor 28 game, but that I had actually a rule set for all the models of my warband.
Okay,
we have organized that event, I think, roughly a year before. with everyone creating their own warbands with a little bit of backstory and fluff and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And we made rules based on the standard Necromunda rules, and simply picked profiles from all gangs to that would roughly or as close as possibly resemble the models that we had.
For that event, was that your desert camo
Yes, exactly.
Okay, yeah. I feel those are some of my favorite things that you've done. Like the whole the camouflage and stuff was really great. The little but maybe it was like the leader in the large exosuit or whatever. He's I feel pretty iconic with your work, or at least when I think back to it, that's one of the first things that comes to mind. And the cool little flying craft with the Gatling gun, really neat.
Yeah, the thing with those was that they are actually, in a way, designed to be a warband and to fit into a certain theme and have a certain role. So it's pretty much like designing a unit that would work, or a gang that would work in Necromunda without, or with giving it your own design, so to say.
Well, so were they they were part of your Black Phalanx
yes.
Thing? Can you talk about you have a lot of models and stuff focused around that? Can you talk a little bit about that force and kind of what your goals and ideas and stuff were behind it?
The first time the Black Phalanx appeared was during the Iron Fleet Invitational.
Okay,
I think 3 or 4 years ago, where they had the Thornmoon's Crusade.
Yeah.
And invited people to create a regiment or a force that would take part in that conflict. That was when I created or invented the Black Phalanx Panel Crusade, which is a fleet-based crusade that picks up malcontents and stuff and deserters and whatever, and mind washes them and puts armor on them and gives them a gun, and then put them into the meat grinder.
Yeah.
And to cover up cover for their specialists who do then the dirt jobs and the hard jobs and stuff like that. So a real grimdark army that kind of reminds of the old crusade where the emperor tried to unify the Imperium.
Yep.
And they have their roots there, but all the history is quite in the dark. I have a few ideas, and it's only a frame around which I work with them. But I plan to develop that further in the future. And the Carrion Pass event was a cool way to explore another faction inside the Crusade, because before I had those nightly black orders with lots of dark brown and angelic aspects, whereas these are really tactical, almost SWAT-like.
And they all have
SWAT-like. Sorry.
They all have jump packs, or they're all very mobile force, nice and cohesive. Would you say that they're a group of specialists? Probably.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Jump man.
The little gun drones are really great. They work together really well. They look really kind of believable, and they work really well with the infantry models as well.
Yeah, they're all designed so that they would work in pairs or in teams, and that they I had in mind that they would cover each other and play certain roles on the battlefield and stuff like that. And while they are specialists, They are also highly expendable,
Yeah. Okay.
which you can only see when you look at the big flyer closely. It's not only named casket on the side somewhere, but it has only, or the intention with this thing was that it's a support drone and also their extraction vehicle.
Okay. Yeah.
And it has only seats for 2 people.
That's
So-
great.
They don't intend for everybody to leave.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great.
So there's always a story behind it. And when I build a warband, I usually play out certain scenes and how they would interact with each other or with their enemies. So I can.
How did they do in the operation? Did any of them make it out?
The main quest, so to say, or the main mission was to get onto a big hauler and to extract, I think it was drugs that were intended for High Ruler of the Hive, and we had 4 warbands competing about that goal, and a NPC warband on top of that hauler.
Yeah.
And what kept me from that was the truck full of Gene Stealer hybrids of another guy that was placed directly in front of my my warband when we set up the game. So I was focused on destroying them.
Allocating
Because purge the Xenos.
Yeah, noble thing.
And I think I've got 2 or 3 models onto that rig, in fact. But then the machine room crew came out and had a lot of lucky dice rolls and just blasted the whole deck of that thing clean.
Okay.
But it was a lot of fun. It was a very casual game and had some cool effects. We had the terrain moving to simulate that the rig was accelerated with driving, so it had much movement in it, and Battlefield was always changing and stuff, and it was quite cinematic.
Yeah, that sounds great. That sounds great. Well, I mean, I guess this interview is maybe been going on for a little while. Maybe I could just end with kind of one last question.
Sure.
Do you have any sort of advice or thing you would tell to someone who's kind of moving into this idea, wanting to do kit bashes and conversions and making characters? Just some good advice for how to go about it or how to start, that sort of thing.
The first would be look at, if one wants to do that, he or she has probably already looked at all the stuff that is around there and has probably too much inspiration. So my advice would be to look what you have, or look what you can afford, or what you like the most. If you have to buy a new kit for stuff like that, but mainly you try to use what you have and try to achieve something that is as close as possible as you can do it to the thing that inspires you the most. That might involve a bit of thinking. And of course, people do approach that totally differently, and there can be people who just buy a whole lot of stuff and just delve into it and get somewhere. But I think for most it can be quite overwhelming, and they don't know where to start or something like that. But it's not that I can recommend a certain kit or a certain miniature that is easy to kit bash or something like that. You have to follow your guts, your feeling, and what inspires you most. It doesn't make sense for you to try to start with kit bashing Space Marines if you want to play Grimdark Inquisitor 28 or more like Sororitas army or Eldar or something. Just pick what you want and see where it goes practically. Of course, you have to it's better to have the miniatures at hand, like visiting a Games Workshop and asking if you can have a look at the models or the sprue, or go to a friend or something like that. It's probably better, yeah.
Yeah, because they're little sculptures, and there's a lot of sort of dynamic elements to it that you can't necessarily get from just one picture.
Yeah,
but no,
exactly.
that's good advice, and I think just in general, just trying to do it. The more you do it and attempt it, you'll learn a lot.
Yeah. What I haven't covered with that answer right now is that the Inquisitor 28 is not only about kit bashing, but it's mainly about playing the game and playing it in a different way as you would a Warhammer 40k, with more story behind it and more like playing out little scenes and gunfights and that. And if you are more after that, you can easily pick up just the Blackstone Fortress models or anything like that, where the miniature is actually at a point where you would want it to look. So you can focus more on playing the game, and then decide if you want to have other models that you go kit bashing. And you can already paint them in the grimdark mood if you want to do that. So that would probably be a good start for all those who aren't interested in kit bashing at all, or fear that they can't pull it off.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So that is a good thought too. So it's all kind of just where your priorities are, and just kind of be honest with yourself about that, and just try to do it.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right. Well, it's been really nice talking with you and having you here. Like, I guess, is there any last kind of final words you'd like to say? Anything you'd like to plug or talk about before we kind of wrap this interview up?
Above all, you have to have fun what you're doing, and it isn't really necessary to pull through something that you don't want to really do. Look for projects you want to do and you want to have finished, and have fun with it and share with others. Ask for advice, and what I find is done not often is put constructive critique out there. Like, okay, this looks fine, but I would have used a different head, or the angle of that is slightly off, or something like that. I think that's one aspect that we are still missing a little bit, but the danger there is that it gets incentive very very fast. And so far, the community on Instagram and Facebook that involves the Inquisitor 28 stuff and stuff that is you can put around that is very positive.
Yeah.
And I hope that will stay so for a long time.
No, I agree.
Yeah, no, it sounds good. That sounds good. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us here. It's been really nice talking with you, and hopefully we can have you on again sometime. I mean,
yeah, of course, my pleasure.
Yeah, we'll see you at Adepticon, so it'd be fun to talk about that too, perhaps. But yeah. All right. Well,
absolutely.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Over and out.
Have a good time.
All right. So the podcast portion of this is
so the podcast portion of this is over, but we can still talk. Modern Synthesist ask a question as to what your next big project is. My
next big project, I think what he really wants to hear is that I will start at his commission quite soon. But next big project is the warband for the Relicta Stellars event at Adepticon. which is another Inquisitor 28
Mhm.
gaming event that will take part every day all over the convention, where you can just join in, bring your models. As far as I understand it, it's a little campaign.
Yeah, no, that's sort of my understanding.
With a continuing story, but you practically can hop on the fly so far.
Mhm.
Actually, we also have a comment from someone, Blood Angel 423, asking what we're doing here, and so we're essentially interviewing or like talking with fellow hobbyists, Chris, about kind of kit bashing and converting models for like Warhammer 40,000 and other like related topics. So it says you recently built looks like a Blood Angels army. Yeah, so like all of us here, we probably started playing Warhammer 40,000 and have now sort of merged into building and converting models on a more like individual scale, like small skirmish based stuff.
Yeah, wow, like it seems that's quite a lot of models you assembled for that army. Like I can't even imagine painting so many models.
Yeah.
Like I can't imagine that at all.
Well, so have you started like? There's not too much time left until Adepticon. Do you have a good sense of what you're going to make for like that event? And I haven't paid enough attention to like.
Well, I think you posted something. You at least one of your more recent models, I think, is for
the
Doom
latest
Marine looking guy.
Yeah, exactly. The Doom Marine was the first model, and the thing is, as I am painting that Black Shield Marine and King Theoden from Lord of the Rings for the Golden Demon competition, I was quite absorbed by these two projects and had quite the idea for a warband, up to the point where I even had totally forgotten that it would be nice to bring a warband to that event. That would fit the theme. And as this goes more into the standard Inquisitor gameplay with convoluted warbands and stuff like that, I'm working on a quite classic warband with the grunt or the soldier already done, and there will be a Inquisitor and a bodyguard and a Fiker and maybe 2 or 3 Navy armsmen or something like that. Nothing fancy, like back to the basics.
Well, that sounds cool though. Like
so
I look forward to seeing what you make. And I mean, honest, like you've made so many models. Like even if you didn't build too many, you could probably take a couple use anyway. But it's still nice to make something like as a cohesive group that like you thought about and such. But I mean, as I said, you have so many models that you could bring.
I could just bring a bag full and just pick for the event. Yeah, of course. Yeah, probably.
But, I mean, the new one that you build looks cool. Okay.
The new Enforcer models are really nice.
Yeah, it's actually I tried to do different things with the new Enforcer bodies, and it just didn't look good or hit a certain nerve. And the only thing that is converted about that miniature is that I had to cut off a bit of the Warlock arms to make them fit around the torso. So it's the whole body from one of the new Enforcers with a new head and a gun arm and that little lamp and grenades. So it's really super simple.
Yeah, but it's
a simple thing.
How much of like a different model it looks like with just those small modifications. So I think that's a good indication that the kit bash doesn't have to be super intensive or different to like really change the feel of the models. So like just some careful consideration of what you want to try to achieve can go a long way.
Yeah, often what really works well is applying a kind of contrast where the The Enforcer models with the shields are packed up tightly. They wear helmets and have full body armor. So what I simply did is I gave him a bit more flesh. Like he has his sleeves wrapped up and he wears no helmet, and but has a close quarter shotgun, which wouldn't be that prudent if you go quite unarmed and without a helmet around the next corner. So it's often that simple to add these little, I would say, oddities to a model to make it appear
give them
different.
Visual interest and get people to like sort of think about what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
One thing, Modern Synthesis said no rush. I don't know if you can see the chat, but
I have it far away from my
okay
from my actual seat.
Okay, so Modern Synthesis actually mentioned something here that for us, if we've considered organizing a meetup at Adepticon to like record a podcast episode there, or do like some sort of interviews or something, and that's a good idea. Something we'll have to consider a little bit more because it could be fun. Like there will be a lot of cool people there, like yourself, Chris, Isaac Weirding Way, Vince, like Dark Tech. I think Ward Sylvania will be there.
I think that's a really good idea. And what vexed me the most last year was at Adepticon was that I hadn't considered that I would need good internet to at first connect to the people and to stream stuff or post something on Instagram. And I was at most times totally cut off from online services because my smartphone didn't work and the network at the hotel was really bad. So even align certain events with other people with whom I had chatted before the event, like frequently. It was just, okay, how do I contact them? How do I find them?
Yeah.
And now I really want to put that up on Instagram or ask people where they are at the moment to meet people, connect to people. That totally went downhill last year.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's always challenging, particularly if it's like you're going overseas and having to deal with that, not knowing how to contact people. That's certainly hard. Yeah, so we'll have to consider that a little bit more because it would be really fun to talk with some people, and then just particularly for people who aren't able to go to Adepticon to hear a little bit more about it and what people are doing and that sort of thing. So yeah, that's a good consideration.
Absolutely agree. Yeah.
At this point, is there anything else we'd like to talk about? Any other questions or whatnot? Admitted, like, because we've been going on for about 2 hours, so like we could consider wrapping it up relatively soon. But
Modern Synthesis, he said maybe considering buying a US SIM card, and that he's going to be doing that.
That's my plan too. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that does seem like a wise.
Absolutely, yeah. Just didn't. I had so much in my mind last year, and I probably will so this year too with all the stuff I have to do. But I will definitely grab a local SIM card, something like that, just to have to be online.
That helps a lot.
Yeah, definitely.
That helps a lot.
And I don't know if I will have the time. Of course, I will share most of the stuff I do there, and maybe even do a live stream or Kit Bash stuff in the painting and building area. They have a small area where people can just go and do hobby stuff, which is really cool. Or of course, I will try to stream parts of the Inquisitor 28 event. But there are so many people, and you get into talking with people so easily and so often, and there's so much to see and to grasp that you can it can be quite distracting. So I don't know in which amount this is done. And if you want to try to document the whole thing, you have to put this on the main point of your list, and you probably don't have time to do anything else, or even enjoy the event.
Yeah, but I don't know. So it should be fun. Like, I'm excited to go for the first time.
Yeah,
I should have been doing it probably for years, but there's it's always a time to start, right? Yeah, but with that, is there anything else we'd like to say?
I think we
not
covered
really.
a lot of
I'm
things.
quite pleased with what we have covered so far.
Yeah, well, I would say people, if you haven't followed Kernel on YouTube, you should. It's worth, like, there's some cool kind of kit bashing videos. And to be honest, like, one of your semi-recent ones, I think in December, had you kind of answering some questions that you had gotten from Instagram as you're kind of working on a model. And so I feel that's also worth listening to.
Yeah, that's a format that I want to develop more in the future. I had that Instagram post where I asked people what they would like to know the most.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of answering these questions at that post, because nobody will read it, except those dudes who put out that question would read the answer to their question, of course. So the plan is to answer these questions during recordings of hobby stuff, be it kit bashing or painting or whatever. And I think that will be fun for me to do, and that will be fun to
listen to and
look,
watch.
because you can listen to it or watch what I'm doing or whatever.
And I think, kind of as you also mentioned, that there's not really a huge there's a lot of YouTube channels on painting and things, but like almost none exist that kind of deal with that conversion sort of aspect thing. So I think there's value there. I mean, it's certainly maybe a small niche of the hobby, but it's still something that's cool that I think isn't really being done. So it's good.
Yeah, you can find a few kit bash videos from other guys who are actually really good too, of course. But if you compare it with the amount of painting videos or gaming videos or whatever, the list is quite small at the moment. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, all right. Well, thanks so much for agreeing to come on. Like, it's been really fun chatting with you a little bit, and we'll certainly would love to have you on again sometime.
Anytime.
Talk about other projects and that sort of thing, because it's been really fun. And I think in general this stream and such has become really fun as like a way to just talk with other members of the community and such. And I think the more that we can do that and connect with the community, the better and more welcoming it is. So
yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And I think that's a big part about, and why I think stuff like Adepticon and such is so neat, because the ability to actually meet people face to face, see the models and talk, like, it makes it more personal and engaging. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. So thank you for doing this, for arranging this podcast and streaming all that. And so it's really cool. I really appreciate that, and I think it has great value for the community.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Yeah, and good luck getting ready for Adepticon.
Yeah, thank you.
It'll be a success.
Too, like, Dave, I see you woke up at 4 a.m. That's pretty early. But yeah, we certainly appreciate people watching and asking questions and such.
All right, everyone. Cool. Well, thanks again for listening, and we will hopefully talk to you again soon. Until that time, keep on enjoying the hobby, whatever aspect of it you like. So until next time.
See you, everybody.
Stay tuned and be excellent to each other.
Yep, be excellent.